Hi guys, I'm Bradon. I'll be one of your guys' MCs, and I would like to introduce the next poet, Grace Mullett.
Hi, I'm Grace. First, I want to thank Matt Rapicelli, not just for the awesome meal he cooked for us on the first night, but for being the most awesome stepdad ever. And I want to thank Alison too for being an amazing mentor and blessing us with her advice. It was very, very meaningful, and we'll definitely always remember. My poem is called Adam's First Wife. She is known as Lilith, captivating, coruscating, cunning. Adam beholds onyx hair, dark as night, glassy emerald eyes like round vials of poison, and blood-red lips that frame blinding canines, dagger sharp. Lilith drifts closer. Her brow arches, tantalizing. Her gaze penetrates, hypnotizing. His hands raise to her cheekbone. His fingertips brush her skin. Her eyes become sinister green of serpent scales, teeth porcelain white of rib bone, lips ripe ruby of forbidden fruit. The world goes black. Adam hears, feels a sickening snap. His side erupts in pain, his breath kidnapped. A flash of light. Darkness never was, pain never was, Lilith never was. A woman faces Adam. Honey gold ringlets frame her face, eyes bluer than a clear sky, lips pinker than a rabbit's wet nose. She wears nothing but a dazed expression. Her fingers grip her side. With new eyes, Adam regards Eden, temperate, vibrant, unrivaled in its splendor. He is surrounded by beauty, but he is shaken. By what, he wonders? What is this sense of foreboding? He rises from the grass. Unclothed, curious, he approaches the woman, Eve. In the distance, a branch is laden with ripe crimson fruit. A snake slithers underneath. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Serenity, and I'll be the other MC of the night. Better MC. The next poet of the night is Lianna Goh. So let's welcome her.
So first, I'd like to thank Brian for helping us organize this event and for your unwavering support. So thank you. So my poem is called How to Write a Poem. To make a perfect poem, you must first have a story. Pull it from your heart with a tethered tightened string and place it down beside you. Bring it forth and let it sing. Mix your words together till softened to the touch. Add a little bit of patience, maybe just a brush. Then sit there and ponder. Understand these words to a T. Then use the words to build a window and then set them free.
Our next young poet will be Morayo Obayemi.
I would not let him rest until he got my name right, so. I would like to thank Ava, who was our chaperone for the first night. We had a really engaging conversation over dinner, so I remember it and I appreciate you, Ava. My poem is titled, His Palate Wasn't Sufficient. First and foremost, if anyone is gonna paint me, I want it to be Bob Ross. I want the brown to be so brown that it's gold. I want the gold to sting. Paint a single teardrop traveling down my cheek, and I want to smile. Let it show a little more than Mona Lisa. I want the people to know I was happy, that I found love. The background should be green, then white, then green, with bullet holes. corruption. Title the piece, Oru Komuni, and caption it, Kini Oru Kore. Tell them nothing except I was the joy they found. Put a pen behind my ear and my hair defying gravity. Tie a twig around my right wrist, tie it around my left ankle, invite comparison. Tie it around my neck, invite admiration. Spin me around like an ice skater. If you're gonna paint me, approach it with time. I want it done in memory foam, on memory foam, with memory foam. Remember I was here. Remember who I was. I want it done right. I need it done right. If you're painting me, it means I'm ready to go. It means I've left. It means I want them to remember I was here, that I was true, that I didn't understand myself as much as you will. Mr. Ross, make me beautiful. Make me unforgettable. Paint me in gold. Make it sting. Then hide me away in the archives.
So I just want to start off thanking Rosemerry for just being herself and being her presence. You just give so much to any room that you're in, and we can all agree that she really helped show us our gift. And my poem today is called To You. Paint me blue with my arms a predator to the snakes. Paint me gray like the sidewalks. Paint me black like the back of my eyelids where your laughter used to lie. Paint me in my bed screaming for my mom because of the monsters in my closet. Paint me 10 years later in another bed, crying to the monsters now in my head. Paint my heart as a ball and set it down. Paint the hole in my chest. Paint me Monday morning, head buried in my arms down on my desk, after a night staring at my reflection. Paint my eyes squinting. Paint me shattering the mirror, paint me shattering myself, because you call that beauty and that's all I could ask for. Paint me floating in the sky among the stars. Paint me as every single one of them. Paint me as a god with devil horns. Paint me as a blazing fire, and then paint me as water to put myself out. Paint destruction, paint me as a destroyer. My soul is an abandoned hallway. Paint the cobwebs and empty picture frames. Paint me as a broken record, playing my sorrows on repeat. Paint me wearing the necklace you gave me, lying uneven on my chest. Paint me holding the necklace, looking out the window into a world I thought to be so pure, so innocent, turned into every war they have taught us about in history class. Paint me as water slipping between two rocks. You, the rock stabilizing me, you, the drought murdering me. Paint me as my hands painting your heart, an eraser painting your heart. I beg you, paint me as your heart, even if I'm not. Paint me as a switch turning off the light, as the light vanishing. Paint me with my eyes glued shut, holding the glue bottle. Paint me as my mind bouncing off the vacant walls in a prison cell. Paint the prison cell on top of my shoulders. Paint the pen as it slips out of my hand. Paint the floor, letting it. You are the floor, I am the pen. Paint me standing in the middle of a hurricane. Paint me as the hurricane, trapping myself. Paint me as the knocking on the door to my soul, and paint me as the door, and paint me as the key, and just paint me. Paint me as an ice skater making figure eights in the negative temperatures. Paint me dancing, but only sometimes.
The next poet is Schulman.
First, I'd like to start by thanking Nikki for being a great chaperone and helping out behind the scenes, so thank you. Here is a boy with ordinary, dull brown eyes, eyes that have never faced injustice, eyes that have a mark marvelous sparkle when he laughs, and in twinkle when he smiles. A smile that sometimes seems forced because he thinks he'd sound selfish if he were to say he was unhappy. Here's a teenager who only learns about adversity and discrimination in school and on the news. A teenager who's lucky enough to have never faced it and thinks, why me? And feels guilty for taking his privilege for granted. Here's a kid who could maybe speak up, but he's scared his voice is too quiet. So instead, he's stuck staring into his brown eyes.
That was really nice, Sam. Our next poet is Sudie Thompson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sudie. I'd first like to thank all the mentors that helped us throughout this journey. The advice that you have given us is something that, like was said before, we will carry throughout our lives. But most importantly, I would love to thank Evie. Thank you for introducing me to Wellspring, and thank you for pushing me to do it because you knew I would love it, and I did. So thank you. My poem is titled Dear Daffodils. Every spring you return, bright and smiling, from the barren soil of winter, announcing your arrival in songs of yellow. Hello, hello, we've missed you. And I have missed you, my old friends, but I've been thinking, wondering, dear daffodils, what is it that makes you believe through the chaos of this world? The trust that you'll return to breathe this sweet air once more, where does it come from? Because daffodils, I have been finding it hard to put my faith into the things I cannot see. All my life, I have been waiting, frozen in the fertile depths of the earth, hopeful for the soft light of spring, for the warm breezes of life to reach down through the cracks in the ground and pull me up into the sky, blossoming into my own mirage of yellow and green, thrusting into a great unknown. I want to trust the darkness, the suffocating embrace of dirt, to believe that the growth, gliding beautifully or not so beautifully into the air, matters more than where I happen to be sown. I want to believe that the sprouting is more important than the bloom, the arduous miracle of becoming. Thank you.
Our next poet is Ayla Danner.
Hello, how is everyone tonight? I hope you are well. I would like to thank the supporters, young and old. Without them, their support, none of us would be here. The poets you see now would be non-existent. The poets you are hearing, their voices would not be able to be heard. My poem is titled Ice. Ice-cold feet on the ground, body of frozen water, ripples unseen. No heart can melt you. Alone you may seem, and forever alone you will stay. No one will love one like you, with cracks on your very surface. No one looks below to see the crystal water that sings, the koi fish dancing and swimming. No one sees beneath your cracked surface the golden beauty glowing within.
There is a story that goes around us poets. One night, an unnamed camper was sleeping when he woke up, face to face with a ferocious beast of the woods. His wise words still resonate with all of us. Holy shit, Bobcat. Here he is, Bradon Smith.
True story. So first, I would like to thank Alan. You were just my mentor, my teacher, and my friend. And also, Dennis. I don't know if he's here. Oh, he's here, Dennis. Hi, Dennis. All right, Dennis, I want to thank you for bringing your wonderful work and showing us. It was nice. Spot on pictures. Anyway, my poem is titled Dear Sketcher. Paint me. No, sketch me. Go with the flow. Sketch me big. Sketch me tall. Just sketch me who I am. Shade in all the shady things I've done. Darken the lines thin and straight like the lines on my arms. Tear the page a little like my heart. Spill coffee on it. Crumble it up. But don't trap me in a frame. I wish you could sketch me without detail. I work on the inside. You work on the outside. But fill me with colors. Colors of Picasso. Lines curved straight in mention, in motion. Sketch the ocean's abyss, but yet it appears a shadow as a puddle. As anxious as it is, you still worry about my details. Sketch me with the light beams filtering through the forest, but darken the shadows and caves. Find a way to fill all my cracks with gold. Just sketch me who I am, but when you're done, what do you see? The next poet is another good friend of mine, Serenity Triplett.
Before I begin, I'd like to thank Clive for opening his amazing house to us. It was so great to be able to just hang out with you and all the other kids. Well, not kids, you're my age, but. The one thing I did have a problem with was the fact that you utterly destroyed us at ping pong. I love you, Clive. My poem is titled To My Hero. Dad, you were there when I had my firsts. First breath, first wobbling steps, first tooth. You held me, you healed my wounds with your kisses. You laughed when I laughed, when I cried you were strong. You got me a saxophone and said I created the most beautiful symphonies. In reality, it was just noise. You were there when Mom left and I felt lost. You were beside my hospital bed. You were so mad at me, at the lines on my wrist. But even then you stayed. I remember you breaking down, worrying about your baby girl for a straight week, while I was away getting help. I recall the proud glee and the tears in your eyes when you first saw me in a homecoming dress. You promised me a suit. It meant the world to me. You told me I can be anything and you'd be proud. What if I told you in 10 years, I'll walk around shirtless, proudly showing the scars on my chest, the ones I chose to have, holding the hand of the one who loves me for me. Hearing my children laugh and scream, "Higher, Daddy," as I push them on the swing, enjoying every moment with them like a good father, like you. We start our lives as a block of clay. Years shave away the edges, forming a beautiful sculpture. I am taking the power away from the years and giving it to myself. I will build myself. I am strong, I am powerful, and I am Thomas. And I want you to be proud of me. Thank you. It's Bradon, rookies. Up next is my great friend, Sylvia Boley.
I would first like to start off by thanking everyone here. More specifically, not a poet, but Kathy. Thank you for endless smiles and for sharing your words with us all. My poem is called Let Me Take Control. Paint me. Focus while you do so. I mean complete concentration. Paint me without looking at the blank canvas, which will soon embody who I am perceived to be. Capture my soft blue eyes, a hint of green, almost as if they're meant to glow. Paint me, rough around the edges. I prefer to have a few spikes. Please, make me look the way I feel. Free. I need to be free. Paint me, flowing with the stream of my own tears, swaying with the winds of my madness. Make me the leaves descending from a tree. Make me the yellow of a dandelion in spring. Make me the stars shining in your night sky. No, make me the stars shining in my night sky.
The next poet of tonight will be Lothrop.
Hello, everybody. First off, I just want to thank two people in the audience. Susan. Oh, hi, Susan. You took a college class for billiards and ballet. That's pretty cool. Thank you for being our chaperone. I also want to thank Julia, whichever one. You make probably the best cookies that I've ever had in my entire life. Thank you very much for sharing with us. All right. The first poem we were supposed to read for this camp was one that we felt showed who we were as poets and people. And I didn't know that we were supposed to write one before we came, and I didn't have one prepared, but being here this past week has given me the opportunity to reflect on it, and this is what I came up with. For as long as I can remember, I've crossed my toes, the large over the small. I don't have a reason for it, it doesn't make sense, but I do it. It's something. No. There's a picture of me as a child when my hair was still blonde and a bowl cut covered the top of my head. And in that picture, I look out, away from the camera, away from my hands that wrap my father's head as I sit on his shoulders, away from my mother who stands in front, away from their loving smiles and crooked teeth. Though I was in the picture, I wasn't there at all. Somehow I had already moved on from their happiness, their eventual divorce. Those eyes that searched some object out of frame knew the future because they had seen the outcome before. Those young eyes are ancient, old as the scaly king of the swamp, old as its oldest ancestor, and old as the salty soup of stars that birthed all life. Those eyes, my young eyes, with their infinite potential, they pondered. I see them processing, even in that snapshot of time, and I see my feet with their crossed toes, intertwined like fingers which hold knowledge of my gifts, then observation, and now poetry. I see that I knew, even then at that young age, exactly what I needed to give back to the world. Thank you. Because I'm the last poet, I'm also supposed to say something about Wellspring. This has been one of the greatest experiences of my life, if not the greatest. It's just been incredibly unique, being able to be around all these incredibly gifted individuals and just to be able to share our our mentors with them, and just being able to be here and improve ourselves as poets has been so amazing. And even though I might have not done some online work that was due over the past couple days, I think it was entirely worth it to be here. And I just want to thank Alan so much for having us, and Clive for letting us use this house. All right, thank you guys.
See Mickey watching me like a hawk. To correct my microphone behavior. I'd like you guys to all stand up and face the audience. What a 3 days, amazing. The world's in trouble. We hear that every day. And there's not going to be a silver bullet to fix it. And the best chance we have, in my belief, is to engender the imaginations of the young people that we have. It's our greatest gift. And they're not always treated as that in this culture. We try to do that with them for a few days and look what happened. This is amazing. I knew they were going to be good when they did their first practice session this afternoon, but they just totally knocked it out of the park, I think. It was awesome. One of the things that this program is built around is the idea that everyone carries a unique gift into the world. And depending on what mythology you use, there's some way to forget what this gift is as we come across to the world here. Is that better on me? I'm working on this. So we try to get people to accept the idea that they have a gift, to help them find the gift by seeing it in them. And then it's up to them. It's their obligation to give this gift to all of us. And if we look at people like this, it's impossible to marginalize anyone. In a world that works hard to find differences, the idea of having a gift brings us together. And a great friend of mine that died a year and a half ago, Greg Kimura, who some of you know from previous poetry events, wrote a poem called Cargo, which really puts this idea out there. In my muse there in the second row, Evie did a picture that became the cover of Greg's book, and we put them together. Could you hold up one of those posters, Gus, please? Put them together into a poster, and those are there for anyone who would like one after the performance. There's a website listed on there too that has a lot of good information about this idea. You might be wondering what we did the last couple days, other than play ping pong. We did artwork. We hiked in the woods, one of the most beautiful times of the year, and one of the most beautiful places. We wrote. We laughed a lot. We cried a lot. We made Andy Goldsworthy environmental art projects. And one of the things that I did was tell stories, because stories come from that same magical place where imagination comes from, where dreams come from, where poems come from. And I thought I would tell you 2 quick stories tonight to give you an idea of these. Stories are repositories of ancient wisdom that were put there by cultures that hadn't yet discovered writing. And the stories were told in cycles, but every time you would hear one, it's different because you're different. The world is changing second by second, and so are you. You're not the same people that came into this place a little while ago. I was watching people in the audience, and I always love to see somebody who looks like, getting dragged to a poetry event by my wife and my child. Maybe I could tough it out for a while, and then watch the person just melt, because this isn't the old poetry that made you cringe in 7th grade and vow that it was the scariest word in the English language. This was beauty, and everybody recognizes it. So I'm going to tell you 2 stories. First one is a Native American story. And in this story, once upon a time, once below a time, once beside a time, once around time and round time that cycled rather than ticked on a clock. There was an old woman sitting in her lodge, and some people would call her the equivalent of Mother Nature. And she's weaving the tapestry of the world, and it's beautiful. But the pot is on the fire behind her, and she knows that she must stir the pot so the stew doesn't burn. And as soon as she turns around, her black dog jumps up and rips the tapestry apart. This has happened before, many times, many times, and she knows it. And she turns around and she finds a thread, picks up that thread, and with her imagination, images anew the design that's going to be in the tapestry and starts to weave the world together once again. Second story is a story that comes from China. There's a Taoist priest roaming the West, as they said on that old show, Kung Fu, that I loved when I was a younger person. And he's walking with his disciple, and they come across a family living in a hovel. They're all filthy. You could see the ribs of the children. They look sickly. The land looks sickly. And there's one cow, one skinny cow. The master asks the farmer, "How do you make a living?" He said, "Well, we milk the cow every morning. We could make a little yogurt, we could make a little cheese, we could drink a little milk. And if for any reason the cow gives us a little extra, we take it into the village and we could buy some rice." Thanks him for his answer. He and his disciple leave. And that night, the master turns to the disciple and says, "Go back and kill the cow." You don't question the master. And he goes back and he pushes the cow into the ravine. They move on. The master dies. The disciple becomes the master. And he finds himself back in the same part of the world. And he's felt bad for 20 years that he killed the cow. The only thing, the only little thread holding these people to life. And he decides to go back, and if by any chance there's anyone still there, to apologize. And he comes back. The hovel's gone. There are beautiful buildings. There's a farm with crops coming up in the field and fruit trees in bloom and healthy animals. And he's shocked. And he sees this young man and he says, "What happened here? I was here 20 years ago. It's nothing like it was." And the young man says, "Well, we were living a pretty hard scrabble life. We were depending on a cow. And one night, the cow mysteriously disappeared. And we decided we had to look in ourselves and see if there was anything else we could do. What cow do you carry? What cow do I carry? How many cows have been pushed over into the ravine in our life, and how many more need to be? It's a story that never ends. So we're going to move on a little bit. We're lucky tonight that we have two former Wellspring students who are official grown-ups now. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce them and introduce Liz Heym first. Liz just graduated, I'm sure, with the highest honors from Ohio State, right? Yes. And to celebrate, she took a 3.5-month trip across the country, climbing mountains in all the national parks. So I have the utmost respect for this young woman, and she's going to come up and do a poem for us. Liz.
Hi everyone. So I'm here kind of as like a testament to the longevity of the effect that Wellspring has. Because like Alan mentioned, I was here, I think for the second ever Wellspring. Was it the second? It was 5 years ago, so 7 minus 5.
I think it was the second.
So 5 years ago, I went to Wellspring my senior year of high school, and I've been coming back ever since to the Spring Poetry Festival and just seeing every new generation of amazing young poets. I'm always blown away, like even more every year. You guys are amazing. It was such a great experience to watch you guys perform. And Wellspring definitely changed my life. I definitely gained like more confidence in my writing. I've been writing more ever since. And now I have a lot of content to write about from my living in my car for 3.5 months and rock climbing. So my poem today is about a car getting towed, which happened on my trip. Not epic mountain climbing, but you can write poems about anything. So it's called Tow Truck. Let me fix this. Okay. The truck turns, headlights descending upon us in the empty parking lot, as if we, leaning against the passenger door of a dust-drenched car, crouch in a spotlight, memorized and ready. So much light strips clean everything I have learned about darkness. Mountains and the Milky Way slip behind the curtain, run out to the hall to speak in low voices. The operator surgically loops his hook through the van, winch groaning, motors and metal on metal grinding down all sound until we're unmoored. The van, green and older than me, heaves into the metal arms, drifting higher. Glassy panes lit from without, hollow, a whale pulled back into a dark and roaring ocean.
And our next old new poet is Jessica Kennedy. She loved Wellspring. She comes back all the time. Got an email from her last year, said, could I read at one of the events? I have to do it. I have to share my poems. So Jessica, come up and share yourself. I'm so proud of you too.
Well, I didn't climb mountains for 3 months, but I still enjoy life the best that I can, so I hope that's enough for everybody. I'm sorry. I just wanted to share a little bit more about my experience with Wellsprings. I think I came 2 years ago, and it just gives a good chance to introduce young poets to more seasoned poets. And I'm still in contact with a lot of them, and like Alan said, I kind of beg to come back to anything that I possibly can, because this is kind of my outlet, and it makes you feel vulnerable, and there's something that my stupid brain likes about that. So here I am. I would just like to also say thank you to Omi and Clive, because I became very good friends with their granddaughter while I was at Wellsprings, and they invited me into their home for a couple days, and they're just wonderful people. So why not, right? And also one last thing. I write slam poems, so I don't know if anybody's heard of a slam poem before, but I did see that not many people wrote one. So I am probably about to scream at you, and I'm sorry. This is just what I do, so forgive me for my opposite side of writing things. And my title is untitled. You get it. I'm sorry. He said his mom wanted to get to know me. I watched her eyes slice through every syllable that my mouth did not pronounce to her standards. The smirk her face grew into when I told her what part of town I sprouted from. She did not see the life in the soil that my roots grew deep into. She saw buildings worn down past recognition. She saw corner stores with security gates. She saw boys with no belts wobbling down the street with the kind of pride her neighborhood park parties never set eyes on. She saw the news when that one boy got shot. She's the kind of folk that turns to her husband reclined in his lazy boy and has the audacity to say, "You think that they would have learned by now." When her son was 8, they sat at their hand-carved kitchen table painting rocks for their garden. My mom taught me not to waste the paint. Rocks are better burned inside our lungs. She asked me what my parents do for a living. I stumble for a minute while trying to explain that my dad has scraped pennies against our countertops for years to feed us dinner. My mom hid all of our dollar bills in her lungs and liver. See, she would not understand if I told her my parents have made me the monster I am. They allowed everything confined inside my rib cage to rot before I was old enough to stop the mold from spreading like a wildfire. Her son runs towards the flames and begs to be let inside. She does not know her precious boy has such an undeniable taste for the fucked like me. She sees charity child with plenty of room to grow. He sees skinny waist and strong mind that still cries often, needs held often, will run away often. He was never stabbed with the kind of hurt that takes you out of body for days, and the feel of my lips on his is something that he cannot register, because he has never met a tree that sprouted from rock with no sunlight before. Those girls are always hand-fed fertilizer, watered on a schedule, but I still tower over them. His mother could not comprehend how many nights I sat with blades running new patterns in my bark skin. She will not take anything real about me away from this conversation, but will nod her head with the most understanding looks. So I'll feed her the stories that will make her think one day she'll be able to pick up my heavy heart with her string fingers. Let her finally think she's held all my weight. She'll cut those strings loose when she believes that she actually got to know me. And I will be free of ridicule. As she tells us her biggest troubles, sitting around a home-cooked meal at her hand-carved kitchen table, I will hide in the cushion of her kitchen table chair with more secrets than she will ever know that I have, and I will nod my head with the most understanding looks. Thank you.
I'd like to ask the ping pong champion, Matthias Grove to come up to the podium. Clive Gosnell, our hero.
I love you, Clive.
Well, we've all heard this has been going on for 7 years. And it seems that I pretend to be a teenager, sharing with all the teenagers here, and that sort of brings like a fertilizer or inspiration for me to continue on to my next phase of life. And I just love it. Thank you. So, Omi and I have been delighted to host this event. It brings so much pleasure to us, and also I would say that it's an emotional trip for me. I didn't know that this old buzzard still had some tears left in his reservoir. So, thank you. Evie and Alan have been our hero for so many years now, and beyond that, we've been friends for many years, and to share this event with these children over the years, it's just been the most remarkable thing, and I think it's been brought to this Hocking Appalachian community. So thank you. For much of my life, I've been, I guess, my mission has been caring and sharing. So I have a deep emotion for our globe, our Earth, and I'm going to do what I call a global sketch to tell you my thoughts about what's going on. Oh my. Who ever heard of climate change? Warming and rising seas, receding glaciers, oceans becoming heat sinks, islands and seafronts drowning with human migration, severe droughts, record temperatures, wildfires, air pollution, lakes suffocating with agricultural nitrates, frequent and severe hurricanes, tornadoes, wild flora and fauna threatened with extinction. I'm painting a wonderful picture, right? Hear the global alarm? Does anyone hear Mother Earth crying? I've heard that 2.3 degrees rise by 2020, 3.5 degrees rise by 2050. When all glacials melt in 30 years, it seems that seas will rise 120 meters, displacing 5.6 million people to flotillas, searching for another planet. Oh yes, leaders cry. Fake news. Is there life for other and new leadership? Human intervention is now looming within the universe. Mars, Jupiter, Neptune, Venus, yes, concerning. Nature does have a message. Walk with purpose. Observe, listen, care, cry, heal, and travel together. Youth has the potential for healing Mother Earth with comprehension, grit, and resolution. Teaching us seniors the lessons in environmental health, respect, and integrity. There's an OSU physicist, Lianna Thompson, that gave a presentation recently, and I will share some of his observations. He says there's no silver bullet However, there is a silver shot. A piece at a time. Poetic scribe is the means in teaching, healing, and crying for Mother Earth, and concern for Hill. Thank you.
Well, this has been a really good, no, we have two more people that we want to call up here. Our poet teachers who did a spectacular job. And I would like to call up first Rosemerry Trommer, who was just magnificent this week.
And when October goes, the same old dream appears, and you are in my arms to share the happy years. I turn my head away and hide the helpless tears. Oh, how I hate to see October go. The leaves are falling, falling as if from far up, as if orchards were dying high in space. And tonight, the whole earth is falling away from the stars in the loneliness. We are all falling. Look at this hand. It is falling. And here, this other. It's in them all. And yet, there is someone with hands infinitely calm, holding up all this falling. I should be over it now, I know. It doesn't matter much how old I grow. I hate to see October go. That was one of my very favorite jazz standards, and the poem was by Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke, one of my very favorite poets. So one marvelous thing that happens when poets get together, we have a lot of fun. And I want to say that I've thought about this often. You know, we have these collective nouns for birds. We have a murmuration of starlings. There's a murder of crows. I think to myself, what would it be to have this collection of poets? What should we call ourselves? A stanza of poets? It's cute. My friend Dave suggests a bankruptcy of poets, perhaps. I often think myself, though, it's a communion of poets. That's what happens when we get together. And I wanted to say, too, that there is something absolutely glorious about all of us getting together and, as I say, joining our voices into this big conversation. That's what we're really doing at a reading. There's something glorious about having a new book of poems, but that isn't why we do this. The practice is because it changes the way we see the world. It changes the way we are in the world. It completely transforms us, and that's why we write poems. So my new book is called Naked for Tea. It's not me. I just feel like I always need to point out that I'm not the one on the cover. But I thought I'd share with you the title poem, Naked for Tea. That's right. I showed up naked for tea. I know. It's not the proper thing to do. I was a bit surprised myself to find I'm wearing nothing more than this pink scarf. closer I got to showing up, the less I had on. At least it is soft, the scarf. At least it is warm, the tea. You don't have to pretend you don't notice. I won't either. We'll just go on. It's a bit awkward, as most things are at first, but maybe by the time we pass the cream, you will have slipped out of your own button-up shirt, your judgment, your embarrassment, your belt, and maybe it will be so wonderful, this lack of anything between us, that by the time we get to the bottom of our cups, we will wonder why we would ever spend an afternoon or an evening together any other way. So I write a poem every day. I've been doing that for about 12 years, and I do a crazy, stupid, foolish thing. I send my first drafts out into the world every day. I have them on a blog, I have this huge mailing list, I send them out, and for a while, meaning for like 5 years, my mom said, "Honey, I'd like to be on your mailing list," and no way was I putting my mom on the poetry mailing list, because I didn't want her to have any more reasons to have to feel like she needs to pray for me. So eventually, she says, "Rosemerry, Gail, please put me on your list." I did. And for the most part, my mom she shows crazy, amazing restraint. She really, I feel like, reads the poems and doesn't lecture or anything. But when that poem came out, Naked for Tea, my mom writes back immediately, "I hope that is a metaphor." Of course, Mom. How it goes on. On the day I learned that he died, I made blackberry jam. The kitchen was steamy and hot from the water bath, and the bubbling saucepan of fruit took nearly an hour to gel, and I stood and stirred and stirred and stood, and the sweet scent touched everything. It was gray outside and smelled of rain, while inside the pot deepened a most beautiful darkness, the color of sugar that comes with time. It was an accident, of course, his death. It was the kind that makes every one of us think we are lucky to be alive, lucky to stand wherever we are standing. Whether it's in line for a bus, or beside the road, or in front of the chalkboard, or in a room full of people we love, or in the middle of the kitchen, stirring blackberry jam. How could I not fall in love with the heat, with the color of blackberries? How could I not fall in love with the cat and the chatter of the girl playing dolls and the racket of the boys throwing pillows, and even fall in love with this ache in my feet? What a blessing to be alive, to feel this awful tug in my gut, this surge of what if, and the swell of what was, this terrible gift of standing for hours to preserve what is sweet, as if I believe there will be a day, months from now, when we will eat the sweetness and know ourselves lucky, lucky, lucky to be alive. So I had a book come out last year. It was a collection of poems, 3-line poems that are paired with 3-line drawings, and it's a great pleasure for me to give these away. I have a little stack of them, and so if you would come and find me when it's done, I like to have you pick one. It's kind of like getting a poem fortune. If you don't like it, you can always give it back and get a different one. You don't get to do that, do you, at the Chinese food store? They only give you one cookie. So I wanted to share some of these with some specific people, although I let people choose their own. There were some that I wanted to give very specifically. This one for Evie. You and I, two threads, joined in one miraculous cloth. And this one for Mickey, who, like, you wouldn't believe how he makes everything stay together despite the way the world works. Just when the bonfire burns beyond control, throwing in another stick. This one is for Alison, who is certainly in my communion of poets, and I only get to see her in these beautiful, precious days at Wellspring. 12-arm love, 2 arms to hold you, 10 to let you go. This one is for Alan. I call it the ultimate surrender card. Even now, even now, even now, even now, even now, even now. Bow. And I'm going to give the whole book to Clyde and Naomi for giving us their house. I'm just not going to say anything else. The house on fire, and me still trying to get all the beds made. So I will give you guys all of your poems when we're done. This is Losing It. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. It was a tiny percentage I knew, but still there was some French royalty somewhere in my blood. And I would spend hours imagining myself in my proper place, in a long pink dress with a thin gold crown on a green hillside in a castle, doing needlepoint, no doubt, and nibbling bonbons. And so, when I asked my mother to tell me again about that part of our heritage, she told me, it's so little blood, and well, you've had so many skin needs that I'm pretty sure you've bled it all out by now. And I was instantly less grandiose, and that was perhaps the first identity that I was aware of losing. But soon after that, I was no longer blonde. And soon after that, I no longer lived in Wisconsin. And after that, I was no longer a scout. Everything I thought I knew about myself didn't last. Oh, this litany of losses. Those notions of who we are. How they shed. They spill, they slip off, and as they get lost, we usually rush to replace them. I became worker, lover, parent, friend. We wear them so close, these identities, that we no longer see them as separate. We think they're who we are. But what if we skinned not just our knees, but our thoughts? And we let those roles escape. Who would be left to walk through the field this evening and see that double rainbow stretching across the east? Birds fly over the rainbow, why then oh why can't I? I guess I should start by saying that when my, a couple of years ago, as we were looking at the elections, I told my kids, hey, you know what? Trump would never win. But if he does, we're moving to Canada. And so, that November, my kids said when they woke up, when are we moving? And I said, oh, sweethearts, our country has never needed us more to show up right here. And so it is that I fell in love with Anna Akhmatova, a woman who was born into Russia's Silver Age. She was the darling of the poetry world. She had enormous success. She had an affair with Modigliani in Paris, and she was a worldwide sensation. But then came the Bolshevik Revolution, and this is what happened next. This is Anna Akhmatova speaks after the revolution. Leave, Anna, Udi, пожалуйста. Leave, they said. Udi, leave Russia forever. Leave while you can. Udi, пожалуйста, they said as the revolution turned red. Blood in the streets. Blood splattered on boots. Blood that stank like blood. But leave? I have left every man I ever loved. But I will never leave Russia. Its steppes treeless and rolling, its vast pine forests, its generous lakes. I am myself because Russia is Russia. I have tattooed its secrets all over my body. It is a lover who claims me, a lover I love beyond reason. And look what has become of Russia. Fresh graves cover the land. Terror fingers all things in the dark, leads even moonlight to the axe. There is an ominous knocking inside the wall. Is it a ghost? A thief? A rat? The secret police. They execute the thinkers, the artists, my ex-husband, my friends. They've taken my son to the gulag to die. They've banned my books. They forbid me to write. There are spies in my mail, in my walls, in my wires, but they cannot silence Russia. There are cliffs in me, there are deepest lakes, and I am Siberia's blinding light, and I am the Russian people themselves who again and again survive. Lenin should have killed me too, for though his police try to silence me, poems grow through me like weeds, and I no longer speak with the voice of a single woman. It's with 100 million Russian mouths that scream. I whisper poems. I whisper poems into the ears of my friends, and they memorize them. I don't need paper. And through the lips of others, the poems rush to the hopeless in the streets, and the poems slip beneath the locked doors. The poems stand in line and wait with the women who want to beg with the jailer, and the poems flutter past the butcher's reach, and they speak of the suffering and the futility of war. And they speak of the beauty, the power and the beauty and the strength we will win this war. Now we know. We know what poems are for.
When we started this enterprise 7 years ago, I had to think up what poets to invite. And the one that's been with us the whole time, Alison Luterman. She's kind of strange looking. It's like this big heart with a head and limbs on it. She is. She's just such a warm, welcoming, brilliant poet. And I'd like you to come up for the 7th time and share your work.
I neglected to say that the first time I ever read my work out here in Ohio, I almost caused a riot. This has been an extraordinary week, or a couple of days. It feels like a couple of years, really, but it's been an amazing time, as everybody has said. And the first poem I'd like to dedicate to Alan, actually. It's called Invisible Work. Because no one could ever praise me enough. Because I don't mean these poems only, but the unseen, unbelievable effort it takes to live the life that goes on between them. I think all the time of invisible work, of the young mother on welfare I interviewed years ago who told me it's tough. You take him to the park, run rings around yourself, keeping him safe, cut hot dogs into bite-sized pieces for dinner, and there's no one there to tell you what a good job you're doing, how you were patient and kind for the 1000th time, even though you had a headache. And I, who am used to feeling sorry for myself because I am lonely, when all the while, as the Chippewa poem says, I am being carried by great winds across the sky, thought of the invisible work that stitches up this world day and night, the slow, unglamorous work of healing, the way worms tunnel ceaselessly in the earth so it can breathe, and bees ransack this world into being, while owls and poets stalk shadows, our loneliest labors under the moon. There are mothers for everything, and the sea is a mother too, whispering and whispering to us long after we have stopped listening. I stopped a minute and let myself lean against the blue shoulder of the air. The work of my heart is the work of the world's heart. There is no other art. And thank you, Alan, for all the invisible work that you do. It takes a lot to put this thing together, a ton of work, most of which is invisible. This is just there's deep, deep roots, and then this is the flowers, but the flowers are the tip of the iceberg, and the roots go down very far. As people have said, there was lots of laughter and lots of tears this last couple of days, and the tears were rich. The tears were great. And they made me think about this young woman activist whom I became aware of in February. I think a lot of us became aware of Emma Gonzales. And the way, when I saw her giving her speech, and she was crying, and she didn't stop giving her speech, and she was as powerful a speaker as I've ever seen, and she was crying. And I thought, this is a new way to be in the public sphere, where it's whole. You don't have to repress half yourself to say what you need to say. So this is for all the people who cried this weekend, and that would be men, women, boys, and girls, and everybody in between. Everybody. It's called The New Breed. I see her on TV screaming into a microphone. Her head is shaved, and she is beautiful. and 18, and her high school has just been shot up. She had to walk by friends lying in their own blood, her teacher bleeding out, and she's my daughter, the one I never had, and she's your daughter, and she's everyone's daughter, and she's her own woman in the fullness of her young fire. Calling bullshit on politicians who take money from gun makers. Tears rain down her face, but she doesn't stop shouting. She doesn't apologize. She keeps calling them out, all of them, all of us, who didn't do enough to stop this thing. And you can see the gray faces of those who have always been in power contort as they face this new breed of young woman, not silky, not compliant, not caring if they call her a 10 or a troll. And she cries, but she doesn't stop yelling truth into the microphone, though her voice is raw and shaking, and the Florida sun pours down like molten brass. I'm 3,000 miles away, thinking how Neruda wrote, "The blood of the children ran through the streets without fuss, like children's blood." Only now they are raising a fuss, shouting down the walls of Jericho. And it's not that we road-weary elders have been given the all clear exactly, but our shoulders do let down a little. We breathe from a deeper place. We say to each other, well, it looks like the baton may be passing to these next runners, and they are fleet as thought, fiery as stars. And we take another breath, and we say to each other, the baton has been passed. And we set off then, running hard behind them. So while I was at Wellspring, I quoted a poem, an entire poem by Lucille Clifton, which is one of my favorite poems. It's called "You Ask Me Why I Do It," which is, why do we poets do this thing? It is crazy, really. There's no money in it. I hate to tell you guys, but we do it. And she writes, "You ask me why I do it, though I fail again and again at the giving of true names. It is because I am Jesus and his mother, and these failures are my job." And I told them I stole that line, "These failures are my job," and I titled a poem that. And Evie said, "Which poem was that?" And I said, I'll find it for you. It's in Desire Zoo. So this poem is called "These Failures Are My Job," and it's dedicated to Evie for tonight. Because these failures are my job. This morning, I failed to notice the pearl gray moment just before sunrise when everything lightens. Failed also to find birdsong under the grinding of garbage trucks, and later walking through woods to stop thinking for even 5 consecutive steps. Then there was the failure to name the exact shade of blue overhead. Not sapphire, not azure, not delft, to savor the soft squelch of pine needles underfoot. Later, I found the fork raised halfway to my mouth while I was still chewing the last untasted bite. And so it went until finally, wading into sleep's thick undertow, I felt myself drift from dream to dream, forever failing to comprehend where I am falling from or to. This blurred life, with only moments caught in attention's loose sieve, tiny pearls fished out of oblivion's sea, laid out here as offering or apology or thank you. So years and years and years ago, I fell in love with a record album. They had record albums. That's how old I am. So the record album was by Buffy Sainte-Marie. I no longer remember the name of it, but it was the one where she has a green face on the cover. Does anybody remember that one? And I actually had an assignment for my 10th grade gym class, which was modern dance. I kind of sucked at gym, but the only thing I was pretty good at was modern dance because you didn't really have to, you could just fake it, you know. And so we were each told to choreograph, a dance piece to our favorite song. And a lot of people picked like really nice songs. And I picked this one. It's called Codyne because it spoke to me at the time. And it goes like this. I'll just do one verse. It has about 5 million verses. My belly's a craving, I got a shaking in my head. Feel like I'm dying and I wish I were dead. If I live till tomorrow, it'll be a long, long time. And I'll reel and I'll fall and I'll die on Codyne. And it's real one more time. So like I said, it has 10 million verses, like over and over and over and over. And I had to choreograph to all 10 million of these verses, so it took me a really long time, and I played the record about 2,000 million times, which of course, living in a small house with a large family was very much appreciated by everyone. So this is called Buffy Sainte-Marie, I Love Your Howl of Anguish, because it's real. Even her name tasted of snow, and her voice was wild river whiskey knocked down the back of the throat. And it's real one more time, she growled in that unearthly vibrato, shaking my small plastic suitcase-shaped record player. I never tired of it, never got enough, played the same song over and over, all the furniture in our living room pushed back so I could perform flailing imitations of drug withdrawal, whip-whapping my young head around like a yo-yo in a hurricane. I am a wound crying to be touched. I am a fragile sword stuck quivering in suburbia's gray tombstone. My father threatened to break the record in half. And my mother, scared, slammed what doors she could. But that voice of rust and regret seeped in under the threshold with its message of hell and gone, its molten insinuations. And I was already out of my mind, galloping wild over the moaning hills, strung out on a line of song. And I want to share with you, thank you, I want to share with you my husband's favorite poem, Bad Date. It's not about him. Yes. That's why he likes it, because it makes him look really good and feel really good about himself. So this is Bad Date. Trying to talk with this man is like trying to drive through a blizzard. My hands grip the steering wheel grimly. My eyes are searchlights peering through permafrost, looking for a road somewhere out of the storm of his words. The wheels keep slipping, threatening to strand us somewhere in the middle of a drift. I can't see 2 feet in front of his argument. I don't even know what he's arguing about. Now he seems to be smiling as if he thought I agreed with him. Don't panic. Times like these, I miss my ex-husband. I miss every man I ever had a decent conversation with. I miss silence. Being alone with this guy's thoughts is like being on a squash court with that vicious little ball bouncing off the walls, floor, ceiling, everywhere. The waitress in the beautiful sari has refilled our water glasses 3 times, but he doesn't feel he should leave a tip. because they didn't display their sign boldly enough outside. He has asked to speak to the manager. What's it like to be this guy? Be in his head, I mean. Talking to him, I feel like a frozen mouse about to be fed to a child's pet snake. We have discussed my work and his work, and we both agree we both do important things. We have talked about yoga and we have talked about yoga and meditation and politics and, God help us, therapy. First thing tomorrow, I will run away and join the circus. Will I ever be with a man again, like water braiding itself with water, unconcerned as it whispers against wet stones? Will it ever be that dance again, simple and mysterious as laughter, arising from nowhere, arising from the belly in wordless, warm waves? Now he has taken a deep breath and looked moistly into my eyes. I think that means I am responsible for his emotional well-being. He is getting ready to recite one of his poems. Maybe there will be an earthquake and the chandelier will fall on our heads and I'll be spared. Maybe a madman will come in brandishing a gun and hold up this restaurant and I'll scream, "Guido, what took you so long?" and launch myself into his arms, and the getaway car will be parked outside, idling. I think I want to end with another funny poem. This was a favorite poem of my friend, the poet Tony Hoagland, who just passed away a couple weeks ago, whom I miss already. He really liked this poem. Has anybody here ever seen that TV show, Say Yes to the Dress? Yeah, do you like it? Okay, it's a crazy show, right? It's really nuts. So I don't normally watch it, but when I'm on an airplane, I get on the plane, I've got like 5 really great books, really heavy books that I'm lugging. And then they used to, this is before now everybody watches stuff on their own device, but they used to have these little screens and you could watch crap TV for, 6 hours while you flew across country. So that's what I would do. So this is called Say Yes to the Dress. And in this episode, a woman of 45 whose face says, "This cake is stale," whose face says, "Just tell me how much it cost," whose face, if you knew how to feel, would make you overtip your waitress. This woman, hauling her 2 teenage daughters, her mother, her sister, and an aunt, announces she wants to walk down the aisle in a ball gown, festooned in something poofy like Cinderella. Even though the entourage and sales lady and everyone else agrees a middle-aged bride should wear a sheath, something knife-like and discreet and lethal. Even though she and her fiance were both recently laid off, and she's been living with this guy for years, arguing about bills and laundry, they have children together, they have a house which they might lose, and God knows why they're even getting married now. Neither one has health insurance. Still, it's her one big day, and she's determined to have it. So dress after dress is trotted out, tea-length confections of satin and tulle, strapless numbers ribboned and ruched, and the words shirred and scalloped and pin-tucked are used and found wanting. The sales lady is practically drowning in a magnificent tumble of glossy, rejected fabrics, leaving the viewer to imagine the texture of this woman's disappointments. Her lower lip trembles. She only has $2,000 to spend, which, in the parlance of this show, is peanuts. Still, a girl has a right, doesn't she? Doesn't she? The flight attendant trundles by, offering coffee and cookies and headphones, and I'm thinking, say yes! Yes, yes, yes already, to the sacred, dreaded threshold. Yes to being shredded like a negligee and scattered like seed pearls. And we're a mile up in the sky where even in June there's a freeze of lacy snow over the rough brown breasts of the Rockies. The plane tilts and rights itself so quietly we don't even notice, dozing as we are in a hive of white noise, suspended blind over the deserts and mountains and fruited plains of our inheritance. Americans, with not quite enough leg room, frowning or chuckling in front of our separate screens, entitled to our dreams and dreaming them. Thank you.
I'd like to end the evening by asking the poets to stand up again and face the audience. I'd like the audience to stand up too. I'd like to end the evening with a mutual show of respect for you coming, for you performing, for all of us opening our heart to imagination and beauty, that we bow to each other. And I learned something about bowing this past summer, that the true way to do it is to bow so your head is lower than your heart. So, thank you for coming, everyone. Please talk to the poets and enjoy the rest of the evening. Don't forget to take a poster. Thank you for coming. Thank you for trusting us with your children.